Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. All right, let's continue. Oh, yeah, you should be getting it now. You should be getting it now. Listen, you should be getting it now. Hold on. Let me see if you're getting it. Are you getting it now? You're getting it right? Oh, good. Thanks. Oh, all right. Well, call back if there's a problem. Call back. But you should be getting it now.
Say to you, I am trying to ensure involves my personal knowledge, and most importantly, one learns from your exposure. It registered in my cranium that you have to be alert. So therefore, what I'm going to read for you today on this text that I've prepared is called a case study of a project where government has questions to answer.
Yes, indeed, of course. A pleasant good night to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web. A pleasant good day to you. Of course, I'm hoping that the internal monitoring system, because I have one or two persons with me tonight, I trusted that you would be monitoring tonight to make certain, of course, that the glitches that we would have experienced in the recent past are either eliminated or is not with us at this point in time. What I observed with this technology, that there must be eternal vigilance, something like the responsibility of every single citizen in this country, including the children. They must learn that Trinidad and Tobago is a democracy, that we are a free people. That means that we are a free people, not that, of course, conduct our affairs ensuring that we have respect for the rights of others. So therefore, you do not go and enter the property of others without their consent, for example. And of course, I could not, of course, take a pot shot at the irregularity with which, of course, home invasions are taking place, a phenomenon in Trinidad and Tobago today. And of course, maybe a offshoot, if not something that could be considered to be not only infringement of people's property and space and person, but of course similar to that of kidnapping, if not akin to kidnapping. And therefore, in my view, the infringement of people's private space, their castle, I think, like the leader of the opposition, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, and the UNC's position on the matter, it should be defended vehemently. Just as how you have a right to defend yourself if somebody attacks you, if somebody attacks your person, the biological entity called the man or the woman or the child. Well, it's the same thing with respect, of course, to one's home. It's just that the home may considered to be inanimate. It may be considered to be, of course, a material, but of course it carries equal value and equal credence to the extent to which it must be protected. After all, what kind of savagery we would, of course, be subjected to and living within if it is we cannot protect or allowed to protect our living space. If we are all right in terms of volume, in terms of video, and in terms, of course, of audio as well. That's all I ask, and the rest be, of course, added on by yours truly, and of course I'm sure that you would be the recipient of a better and a much more advanced program. Remember, the whole objective, we are on YouTube. Sorry I didn't put it up tonight, but I'm going to set it for tomorrow night. Of course, to let you know, especially those who may be newcomers or those who may know, we are on both YouTube and Facebook. Both YouTube and Facebook, as promised. And I want to thank all of the contributors, even to today, when, of course, I ran out of ink and to a lesser extent paper, but certainly ink, to prepare my documentation for the courts. I'm not going to say on what basis or what purpose as yet, until, of course, the actual filing that the actual filing is accomplished. Let me just say that, because nobody must consider themselves to be above the law, except, again, in exceptional circumstances such as the president, where the constitution says that once that person is in office, they cannot be, of course, brought before the court, in both for criminal as well as, of course, civil matters. But at the same time, one expects that our president will be the pinnacle, the zenith of moral, ethical, and of course, because of the position they hold under the authority within that office, as well as to infringe the law. And if that is so, then even in those circumstances, there are certain situations where there can be a removal of the president, as we saw attempted by Kamala Persad-Bissessar, when, of course, the predecessor to Ms. Kangaloo, the present president, was brought before, of course, the joint select, not the joint select, but the joint houses of Parliament, both the Senate and the lower house, the House of Representatives, in a plenary session, in order to determine whether or not what she did and her part she played, or the role she played, with respect, of course, to not forwarding that shortlist from the Police Service Commission to the Parliament, Instead, it was the reverse. It was, of course, sent back to the Police Service Commission via the then chairman of that commission, Ms. Bliss C. Prasad, and that triggered, of course, the ultimate resignation of the entire commission of the Police Service Commission. That is how serious matters are, and how we must take our responsibility crucially, and to deliver and to discharge it in a way that cannot be questioned. And I want to say kudos once again, even then, to the opposition leader and the opposition in general for being conscientious from, of course, the most bizarre, the most anti-democratic stance in Trinidad and Tobago by a marauding bunch of politicians that found themselves questionably as well in the position of cabinet ministers and cabinet, and therefore prime minister elections. And therefore you can only give kudos and commendations, and one has to say we owe a debt of gratitude to being so vigilant and being so circumspect and being so meticulous about the operations and the runnings of the country at the highest level, that they were prepared to generate. They could have left it as is, but no, they decided, because the government had decided to postpone the local government election to December. Yes, December. So all now, if they got their way, we would not have had an election. And don't matter what I consider to be platitudinous, self-conceiting, and of course he uses, of course, the parliament as his, what I consider to be his spawning ground for nonsensicality, and to, of course, infringe the rights of the people. We just saw that with respect, of course, to the budget, for example, and the proposed implementation of the property tax. And of course, outside of that, you have, of course, the spectre that the electricity rates and the water rates will, of course, be impacting on particularly those persons with a salary and salary based. In other words, they have a one source of a salary that has to spread across the various elements that compete for that salary, or a portion of that salary, whether it be for food, whether it be for shelter, whether it be for recreation, whether it be for transportation, whether it be for engaging in other activities that make up or has become intrinsically part of the living ecology of Trinidad and Tobago today, having regard to the quality of life and standard of living all of us aspire to, but clearly what we have seen is betrayal and the unilateral unfair distribution of the resources of the country, enough for a better quality of life than what is happening now. The middle class is under pressure, the lower class has been decimated, and those who are part of that 5 or 10% that controls the majority of the financial and material wealth of the country, promoted by this government, and clearly who are a part of that conspiracy, we know for a fact that we cannot afford that, and we must, of course, resist that. And since the majority of us are in the middle and or comprise the middle and the lower class in the society, then we have a duty and responsibility with one man, one vote, and our right, our franchise to, of course, when the election comes, to do what is right, not just to ourselves, but for the country and the future of the country, meaning, of course, our will, of course, begin with the statement of Dr. Rowley. I think it is pregnant of not only deflection, of not only deception, of not only innuendos, of not only total and absolute lies, prevarications, and of course mendaciousness, as is stereotypical of the Prime Minister and his cabinet. They seem to have an endemic, or it is endemic within the cabinet, to lie. I believe that somehow that will take them to the next elections and somehow remain in office. That and a pink donkey, Rowley and his cohorts will not see. And therefore, we have a duty every night, every day, to, of course, address the problem and confront it as it is. He could go to Mars, he could go to England, he could go to Canada as he just did. He can go and be the highest flying prime minister ever in Trinidad and Tobago, even though, of course, he criticized Kamala Persad-Bissessar for her own jaunts into, of course, different parts of the world. But today, he not only has outstripped Kamala Persad-Bissessar in terms of number of journeys outside of the country, but also another claim that he made against Kamala Persad-Bissessar, as far as elections is concerned, he has now topped the record of losing the most elections as well. But that being as it may, let's go straight to our external contributor. She was not around yesterday, but of course I'm sure that that was because of technical problems. But let's invite her one time. Pleasant good night. Welcome to our external contributor to, of course, tonight's program. A pleasant good night. Oh boy. Sorry about that. Please call back. I invoked the wrong number. I cut you off by accident. Sorry about that. Yes. Let's go straight to her. Maybe I should not have made that elaborate introduction. A pleasant good night. Welcome.
Hello, Lennox.
Welcome. I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Hello.
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear. Go ahead. Loud and clear.
Okay, Lennox, I get cut before I start out the gate here tonight.
Yes.
Problem last night and I couldn't get to call you.
I suspected that.
I understand it.
Yes.
Lennox, first things first. Yeah, anytime he said don't call Lennox, it's because of that. I was just talking to my son, and he said he's going to call slow again.
No problem. You take your time and do fast.
Some runners, sandals. Sandals. I sent you a correspondence.
Okay.
From a runner, Sandals. Saunders, sorry.
Okay.
His comments on Dr. Royal. Did you read it?
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
I hope you read it then.
Yeah, I'll do that after.
It's most about a BS. It's the most amount of BS I've heard in a long time. Now, if
I read that article.
Anyway,
Yeah, okay.
This man is making a lot of... Right. Yeah, are you hearing me now?
Yeah, very good. That's why I could respond in the way I have. Yes. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, yes.
Right. Okay, alright, then I'll just continue. I don't know if the others are hearing me, but...
Yes.
Yeah, what he's making excuses for Dr. Rowley's attire. That he was on the way out. Right? And they called him back at the last minute to take over for Skerritt, who went back to Dominica to stop him. Now tell me, for a Prime Minister, is that the way he was going to be dressed to go to people airport? The man clearly showed Lennox that he has no kind of decorum. Right? He has nothing good about him. Because you can't tell me as a Prime Minister, you dress like a gangster. You could dress like a vagrant. I wonder if he's one of the debate run that the Arson said that they have less people in St. Dan's now. And a person called Hoodia asked that if why you don't talk about the Arson saying that there are less people now in St. Dan's, I think like half the amount or whatever, mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they came up from St. Dan's, but where are they? All over the streets of Watersfield. Is that something to be proud of? Because I can't see that as being anything to be proud of. And okay, you send these people home, right? Let's say for argument's sake, and I'll pick up here the waterfall.
Yes.
If you send these people home, if these people are not there again,
Yeah.
are they getting medication? That's the next question, you know. Are they getting medication? Very much. But you see, Lennox, there's always a stigma attached to schizophrenia, right? There's always a stigma.
Yes.
And people wouldn't talk about schizophrenia, right? They wouldn't talk about that. But we know that they are struggling with mental health and depression issues.
Yes.
But that's nothing to be ashamed of, Lennox.
Of course not. It's
You know,
a
and
ill bunch.
again, this time in our society, we have a lot of that going on.
Yes.
We have a lot of that going on. So, you know, we are they getting the medication. Now, today's press briefing was very, very interesting in things that both FPs, Saddam Hussein and Dr. Munilal spoke about.
Okay.
Right? And I really wish that you would listen, go through it and listen.
I will.
And listen to what it is they have to say, Lennox.
I will.
Very interesting. And Dr. Munilal spoke again about that 11 million with Bento. That 11 million with Bento. Right? Nothing, not a meeting, nothing, absolutely nothing was done. And you spend 11 million, the Bento collected that money. But Lennox, look at how they can have money for that, but not money to finish the sports for the children.
Yeah.
And begging with a calabash all over the place, as though the country don't have money. Now, I am not saying it might not have the amount as it had before, but clearly the nonsense that they are doing, right, shows that there's money in the country. And Dr. Munilal also spoke about that highway. He said there are no signage, there are no lights. So then how can you open a highway? Right? Is it because of the elections coming up soon?
No, we don't.
How can you open a highway without proper signage, without lights, without this, that, and the other, Lennox? How can you do that? And then coming to talk us about crap about what UNC do and what UNC do. But according to Dr. Munilal, right, that is not a complete highway, that is not the highway to point 14. Because you have 4 break-offs to get back onto the highway. And I was so glad that he spoke about these things, at least letting people know.
Yes.
Letting people know. And you see, Lennox, then they will come here and other places and say the UNC not doing anything. Or the UNC quiet, the UNC, they were sleeping, but they're not listening. And a lot of issues were raised this morning by both those MPs. Lennox, before I leave, I want to I also send you that press conference, not a press conference, but an interview with 2 people concerning the electricity rate hike.
Okay.
Talking about other places. Listen, I am living in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, Trinidad. I am not living in other places. Other places don't have power outages like Trinidad. Other places are better off than we. So don't come and tell me about other places. And the next one, clearly, PNMI, talking about if we want everything for free. Now, come and think now, if you see the sanctimonious hypocrisy, if that was under Kamala's government, they would have taken the streets, right? They would have taken the streets for that hike. And talk about Kamala when they killed their Kamala, this and Kamala, that together. But funny enough, I heard calling for protest against this. Who coming out? Who coming out? The coward UNC people? Who afraid for people to see them? Who afraid they can't get stolen or wrecked? Who afraid tear gas? Who coming out? Until we get serious in this country about the crap that the PNM is doing, we're going to always get the shot from them. Lennox, thanks so much for listening to my 2 cents. Take care and have a good night.
Yes, so it had to be due to circumstances beyond your control, and I will, of course, look at those pieces of information that you would have sent to me via the usual medium. That being as it may, let me say as well, of course, I want to extend my deep appreciation to Dr. Khalid this morning. I think he was wonderful. I understand that we were not as we would have liked to be on Facebook this morning, but we were certainly on YouTube. I saw it, but I couldn't find it on, of course. Subsequently, however, I uploaded this morning's program onto Facebook, so you can go there and have a look-see, so to speak, or a peek, or of course, enjoy yourself with respect to what we did this morning. I think it was spectacular. We delve as usual with some of the subterranean issues in Trinidad and Tobago and the inability of this government to address them, of course, under a more sober and analytical perspective. It is not like the night programs when, of course, I will be blunt and blatant, even though I tried to be this morning. But Dr. Khalid, in a very, what I consider to be not so subtle, but certainly a forceful way, and that, of course, this is the Sunday edition of the Corridor Transformation, the morning edition, and to remind me that his presence is there, and therefore, of course, he would like to be a little less militant, for want of a better word, and therefore, of course, my blatant and brutal and frank this discussion or disclosure this morning, of course, attracted his attention. But that being as it may, the fact of the matter is that we must tell it as it is, say it as it is, and of course, do not allow people to hoodwink us, do not allow people to gaslight us, do not allow people to believe that we are fools, consummate fools, and that they could get away with, of course, the nonsense that they speak, and without consequences. That being as it may, but let's get back, of course, to what I promised this last night, and that is to say, to utilize this particular program to firmly and conclusively address the statement made by Dr. Rowley before he left for Canada at the ribbon cutting ceremony for the extension of the highway from Point Fortin to San Fernando. And let me also add, I always have to rub it in, because unless we fall complacent and don't understand the evil that stalks the land today at the highest level and at the highest offices in the country, and that is, of course, it was Dr. Rowley who initially reopened, or should I say returned the sod for the extension of that highway. Let me repeat that. He returned the sod for the extension of the highway. It was ridiculous, but it was an opportunity again to malign the opposition. That's all it was. But on this occasion, when he should be proud and should be elated, he started to sweat, and of course attempt, of course, to once again deflect attention. And it tells me, as Ms. Santa Cruz rightly said, our external contributor to the corridor transformation, that elections is clearly in the air. And I have surmised, I have of course concluded that it's because of internecine problems, persons who still have an affiliation, a sort of loyalty to the PNM, and because they have nothing to lose, in other words, because they have been there, done that, and are now retired, people like Overon Padmore, I am sure that they are reeling, and of course I'm sure that other people are turning in their graves to see that the PNM, under a marauding, disrespectful, obnoxious, irascible, and choleric individual, a fellow who has been described as a raging bull and have been given the name the Rottweiler. Of course, we realize now that he's really a fellow suffering from acute inferiority complex, and therefore he's a pumpet when one looks at the amount of reversal of some of the policies and programs, either in the law or the way people resist, and therefore what they would do and what they have done is, of course, either quietly abandon the initiative, or they wait for a more salubrious time. The evolution of the implementation of the property tax is a clear example of the latter, and of course the recently reversal of the decision not to have elections by March, or in March of this year, we saw the reversal of that by the Privy Council. So all of those circumstances we must be conscientious of, because it has become stereotypical as they create, of course, for them emergency, but for us it's really chaos in order for the closing of Petrotrin, when in fact the only reason for that is the fake oil scenario, the fake oil fiasco, and that has created, of course, untold problems for the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course the amount of foreign reserves that the country could have gained and ought to have benefited from, simply because the entire cabinet took the decision, in my view a criminal decision, to close down Petrotrin to protect their evil and diabolical leader in the person of Keith Christopher Rowley. That being as it may, let's go straight back, of course, to that presentation by Rowley.
What I'm going to say to you here today is likely to be part of a wider text, because I am really trying to write some of the history of this country. It involves my personal knowledge, and most importantly, one learns from your exposure. It registered in my cranium that you have to be alert. So therefore, what I'm going to read for you today on this text that I've prepared is called a case study of a project where government has questions to answer. The process for the construction of this highway from San Fernando to Point Fortin was initiated by a previous PNM government. And I come specifically to the Manning administration of 2007 to 2010. The North-South Highway artery had reached Golconda by 2010. The next leg was now to be onwards from there to Point Fortin. The Point Fortin Highway exercise was initiated through the process of invitation of tender in early 2010. However, although tenders were received in April 2010, the contract was not awarded prior by the PNM, since the bids received were significantly higher than the in-house engineer's estimate. And that in-house engineer's estimate was for $3.6 billion. So in 2010, that was the target expenditure for that highway, $3.6 billion. On March 4th, 2011, the UNC government, through NIDCO, populated by different people, not the current people who are in NIDCO, those who were in post in NIDCO on the board at that time, awarded a design-build contract to a Brazilian firm, Construtora OSSA, known as OAS, for the lump sum of approximately $5.2 billion, or $1.6 billion more than the original engineer's estimate.
Now, of course, the way the emphasis is, you see, when people speak, not only body language, for example, I will emphasize on something and you would get the message, because we are human beings, and of course one of the greatest assets of human beings is language, the fact that we can speak to each other and communicate in clear terms, and if we wish, of course, we can be as ambiguous as possible. But what Dr. Rowley has said so far, in a sense, when you juxtapose it with what Sinanan would have said earlier, you realize that there is a dichotomy, a division, and a variation from the meanings of the various phrases and sentences that they would have. So let us evaluate what Rowley has just said. He said that it was a P&M initiative, that they were prepared, of course, to spend internally, that is to say, the people within the Ministry of Works, one would assume. He went on to say that the UNC, however, in their execution of the project, because it's they, in fact, executed the project, he, of course, and confessed that it was just the planning stage, and of course putting it out for tender, and tenders came in that were more than what the government was at the day was prepared to pay. I want you at the same time to understand the government of the day that was prepared to pay, because you see, Dr. Rowley has a way to post facto, after the fact, and somehow vicariously impose himself, as if it was his decision to, of course, decide how much they were prepared to pay. The P&M was prepared to pay $3 billion. What said is that the UNC was prepared to pay $5 billion. And when one looks at intrusively and, of course, critically what he would have said, built into it is the reason. And the reason was what? It was a bill, a design bill arrangement. It's clear that the Manning administration did not go that route, and so one would have expected that if you're hiring a man to build something because you don't have all the drawings already, it's different to if you ask him to design it and then build it. So it means there must be more. So there's a justification or a justifiable rationale for that built into what he said. I know that after we analyze it here critically, they would want, of course, to readjust their position. But the fact of the matter is, there can be no justification based on what Rowley has said so far, that there was something wrong about the UNC approach as opposed to the Manning administration approach. But I want to tell you this, because Sinanan, later down tomorrow probably, when we examine Sinanan's statements, you would realize that somehow P&M was a paragon of virtue and a moral and ethical pillar for respecting the advent of elections, and therefore decision making of a major nature should not be made on the cusp of an election that may well cause a change of government, and therefore you leave it to the incoming government to make the ultimate decision on a matter that may be of importance. But I want to emphasize that it is always the incumbent, the government in place, that has to make the decision, whether it is close to an election or outside of the closeness to an election. Let us not waste time with that. How the electorate views it and their and the electoral outcome or the electoral, should I say, fortunes will be determined by the ultimate arbiter or the ultimate judge, that is to say the electorate, as to how and why and the rationale for making a decision before the closeness to an election. Let us not waste time in that. Fans and apologists don't understand that. You have to be wicked if you don't understand that. And I always make the case for what has happened in a budget just before the THA election, that budget, because Rowley and they were intent on soaking, on appeasing the Tobagonians, and so they built into that budget a large amount of resources that would not normally be for them. Let's go straight to the line as well. Pleasant good night, welcome back. Pleasant good night, welcome back.
Lennox, pleasant good night again. It has to be wicked, illiterate, and crayfish. You understand?
Yes.
Because if they don't realize that Rowley lied to them like Barry Goodram, coming to talk about how what they were bid rigging, real corruption in that highway, and yet the SRP case couldn't find anything.
That's right.
They paid Plantor 11 million. And if they were sure it had been rigging and massive corruption, as Barry, that is Miss Barry, coming here tonight to spew, right? How often now they can get that inquiry off the ground? But you see, Rowley is a chronic liar. He lied his way into office, and Lennox, I am telling you, lies are going to take him out.
Of course.
People are going to get fed up of his lies.
Of course.
Right? He said when he lied about the Europe interchange, oh, they said this amount of money, but he never told the people that they changed his scope of work.
That's
Which
right.
was an important factor.
Of course.
Because as you rightly said, if they had an ounce of brain, and we know they don't have it, because they went through the gas station instead. But you see, they don't sit down and analyze these things, and then they want to call Kamala a failure. A failure is what Rowley is today.
No doubt.
Has done nothing to improve this country. Kamala built schools, Kamala got awards, and you want to call Kamala. But you see, I realize that you don't plant an empty mango tree. You plant one that's bearing fruit, and they're so afraid of this lady that they come in with all kind of nonsense concerning the crap that Rowley, the opposite of what Rowley is doing. But they can say what they want. They can jump high, they can jump low. Facts are there. It's a strange thing. Facts don't change. But as you rightly said, they are illiterate. And I wish half of them would enroll in altar classes. It's free. Altar classes are free. Get some knowledge, educate yourself. Knowledge is power. Don't come here and spew nonsense like that it was bid rigging. You go and all about. When they say they have nothing to say, they come here and they bray like a foolish donkey. That's what they do. But they don't listen to facts. They don't listen. Rowley's lying. Just like how we talk about the Peter wastewater project. If something started under the PNM, 14 years at less than 500,000. 14 years in the future, will it be the sit there? No, it won't. So it's just a sort of nonsense, illiterate nonsense that they're just spewing. Lennox, thanks again.
Yes, indeed, and it makes a lot of sense. It is common sense, and I like the last example you drew with respect, of course, the time effluxing and the initial decision to make to, of course, implement a particular project. That the longer it takes, the higher the cost, because material, labor, etc., all kinds of things can happen in between. This particular statement, you will hear Rowley justifying that the project, once it started with $3 billion preferred to $8 billion. And Rowley would have said it in that particular statement there. $8 billion, so from 3 to 8 billion. And of course, the efflux of time has to do, of course, with the shenanigans that Rowley, instead of going immediately and pursuing where the OAS left off, or where the UNC left off, he decided to play politics. He tried to, of course, for him to manifest a pipe dream. We know now we can call it safely a pipe dream. You see, Rowley's pipe dream is always to make the UNC look bad. And so it had to take some time for all the major players here, the OS and the government, for each other to firmly understand where they are in terms of that particular project. So Rowley waited 6 months, never paid the people, and they indicated in writing to the engineer representing the government, and therefore NITCO, that they are slowing down operations because they are not being paid. You learned, of course, on the last occasion, if you were following, but it's my duty, of course, for those of you who just joined, to understand the nexus and the chronology, and if you understand it, it's smooth, logical, and of course highly comprehensible. In other words, comprehensible meaning not total, but it means you can understand, comprehension, in other words. That's what I'm talking about. There's a logical pattern. So it was Munilal, of course, in the clips that I played before in this series, this mini-series, where he said that OAS was owed $53 million US by the time Rowley and they continue with the services of OAS. 6 months passed at the same time too. Well, it has to be true, because several years later, 8 years after, the internationally known, and in the same FINIC book that he talking about, you hear him talking about it, which of course is an international arrangement of engineers for what is called infrastructural development works in different countries. They have an international Bible that they use that will outline all of the terms and conditions. They have a red book, they have a yellow book, and I think they have a green book as well. They call it by the green book, and depending on what you want to do as a country, employing some contractor internationally or even locally, that is the book that they use. And incidentally, that is the book throughout that also state when a dispute arises, who you must go to, and they have agreed. Who? The international arbitration based in the book say. Rowley will talk about the book and talk about the obligations as far as he is concerned of the government, and that they, in his illusion and haste to blame somebody except himself, will talk about of course the government's, the then government obligation, but will never talk about his obligation to continue the blasting contract. This man is the devil personified, you know, but believe he bright. Believe he bright. And I want to say to Miss Santa Cruz, do not be perturbed when they come to this program. They come for edification and knowledge. And I've always said that education is about moving from the known to the unknown. So, whosoever it is, Budram, or Bud Cow, or Bud Bull, It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that they would be regurgitating what Rowley and them tell them is obvious. And I had that argument this morning with Dr. Khalid, both off and on air this morning. When, of course, I took an aggressive approach to a particular minister or a government representative, and he preferred that I spoke a little softer in terms of the choice of words, and I told him in non-certain terms. But of course, with him present, he preferred to take Dr. Rowley was, of course, engaged in an accident, and he had the opportunity to save him. He would, of course, extend, so it has extended that human courtesy, and he sees it from a human to human perspective and has nothing to do with the politics and his conduct. And I say to him afterwards, of course, I said, well, if it's the same Rowley that is managing the affairs of the country today and has put us in all that pain, I would have preferred to throw a blind eye and go my way. And of course, he was taken aback by that statement. But let's face it, why must I help someone who is providing pain, ache, not to me alone, but to my whole family? And I must be as altruistic and humane as possible in those circumstances, knowing full well that if he is mended, if he recuperates, the pain, ache, agony, a decadence and evil that will descend upon me and my family because of that unrelenting and brutal nature of that individual, I want you to think about it. I will go no further on that. That's one. But of course, as far as those persons are concerned, they are merely regurgitating what they were told. So the question of a cartel, I mean, all you have to ask them, who were the players in that cartel that was told by the PNM through Church Young in particular? But let me tell them one time, let me burst the bubble one time. The same so-called cartel members are the same individual entities that have been deployed not only on the highway to Point Fortin. Deploy here means use, to work, get contract. Under, and just in case you forget, temporarily or otherwise, or in a fit of madness because of what I've just said, under the PNM administration, it's under the PNM, yeah, Rowley said, he employ Calco, Amalco, Fide, and two others that has evaded my memory at this point in time. All of them got contracts by this government. My friend, I know that you are not feeling comfortable at this point in time because of that fact. Those are the ones that they say were engaged in a cartel arrangement. I know you come here for knowledge as well. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Good night to you as well. Loud and clear. I'm giving you the thumbs up. Loud and clear. Yes. No. Very proper.
Alright, Mr. So, I would like to tell you the views how when UNC was given laptops and UNC was raising pension, and when UNC was giving $500 and show them that our government who knows what they're doing and what how to manage a country, not mismanagement, how to manage a country, just do for the citizens. Because that is really the wealth of the country is for the citizens to improve their life and show them, because I don't know if it was going to this, that's what the country was doing, how the country had resources, how the country was very foreign and that. And that don't mind people, when the war was happened in 2013 when the country was prosperous and so on. Because, you know, I understand sometimes you just educate the people and they are out here last 5 days to the year. And yet still these people come and they will talk to nonsense and chat because they believe what this man telling them. They just show them videos on UNC 2015 with all the things that Kamala was doing to them. And when you go back when Paddy was there, when Paddy was being out, making people able to be able to buy a car, and then he was giving all these photos and into the properties if there was a certain time. And then thank you very much for the answer. I look all around.
Yes, and I want to tell you, even from afar, wonderful idea, and I'm certainly going to develop a series to treat with it, and you have taken it into the Bazio Pandey administration. I think that is also wonderful and commendable, because it will also, of course, make a comparison with the Manning administration, and then, of course, lead us straight, that is, of course, the PNM today, and the level of mismanagement, incompetence, and misappropriation of resources, and of course, policies and programs. Future, if we as an electorate are not conscious and put an end, stop, a terminus to all of this shenanigan that clearly cannot be sustained, and not to the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago, its citizens and the taxpayers. That being as it may, I want to get back, of course, to the fact that those persons who Rowley and Stuart Young deemed to be members of a cartel, and they even went to court under seal and bring them to court. It is clear now, it is no history. Now, Malco, one of the cartel that they say was part of this attempt to undermine and to, of course, fleece and steal from the state in an organized way. You know, Namalco went to court for six projects. And they said that they weren't paid for, just as how OAS wasn't paid. Because Rowley and them say that such a company cannot make $1 billion in Trinidad. So, from that perspective alone, in other words, they see in others that which is in them. They are incompetent. They can't perform. They can't be creative. They cannot, of course, demonstrate a level of productivity and inventiveness that is beyond the average. So they believe in judging people at their own incompetent and indolent standard. And so they went to court. They went to court for six projects. The court decided on 4. The court decided on 4 and awarded money to Namalco, one of the same companies that was supposed to be in this so-called cartel, as prescribed and as suggested and as projected to us by Rowley and Stuart Young and others. And they awarded them over $400 million for 3 of the 4 projects that was considered the 4 so-called cartel matter that Rowley and them went to court with, in order to fool the population and to make them believe that somehow they have some kind of evidence to show that these people were engaged in activity to fleece and to steal and to defraud the state, you and I. Well, if from that alone they get 400 million, you could imagine, and of course OAS get $1 billion. You must know that Rowley and them are nonsense. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. A pleasant good night. Welcome to that level of profligacy and waste. Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear. I'm hearing you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, but the biggest cartel is young and his brother and his father them. The biggest cartel is young, his brother and his father and them who are bank. All them get
Yeah.
in Trinidad.
Courtesy Rowley and
Them giving the,
yeah.
them giving the government loan and all kind of thing.
That's right.
That is cartel.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, because you see in others that which is in them. They believe that Namalco can make $1 billion. Now, mind you, it's 6 projects. The court considered 4 of the 6. They adjudicated and gave judgment on 3 and attach a cost, attach a financial benefit to Namalco of over $400 million. And the 4th one is to be assessed, so we can easily see $500 million. You know, Rowley, when he had to address that matter, you know what the man turned and say? Well, no, he knows that the matter ain't finished yet, because there are 2 others, as I said, as far as Namalco alone is concerned. Namalco alone, that is 1 of the 5. He knew that that matter isn't finished, because 2 of the 6 that was to be addressed by the judge decided, well, no, it is part of the wider cartel allegation that was made by Rowley and they. So he decided to adjudicate on 4. 3 alone attracted $400 million plus cost and interest and the cost of the litigation. Of course, the state has to pay dollars at the end of the day. Courtesy Rowley and they, for the stupidness, when they could have simply sat down with the people as they could have with OAS, and even if there was a shortfall in terms of the ability to pay, at least they could have worked out an arrangement to so do. But no, he big and strong, and he's a and he's a dictator, and he could of course stop payment and of course spiral the people into economic disaster. So he believed, and that is how he has dealt with the ordinary citizens. When he willy-nilly, helter-skelterly, and of course recklessly and brutally, without understanding that people have fixed incomes, and out of that fixed income, every time of course you add some kind of tax, some kind of increase in the cost of utilities, etc., you are putting pressure on that family and that individual, and therefore that particular fixed income. That is what you are doing. But they cannot think that far. They have a problem of a cash flow problem, and they turn of course to the punitive measure of taxes and impose it on the people. And if you don't pay, we take your house, we take of course your assets, etc., and we make your life a living hell. That is what they are about. They are not about of course treating with things creatively and sensibly and sensitively. President, good night. Welcome to the corridor, this Sunday night edition. That's a good night. Good night to you. Good night to you. Good night to you.
Good night, Lennox. We hardly hear any callers on the live, Lennox. Because last time, because the man stand up on AC again. He said me pick up AC and I get vexed with the line. He remember I won't hold it.
Yeah.
Lennox, I don't ever have my windows open when this bandit and we are here, Lennox.
Right.
Lennox?
Yeah, go ahead.
Your window open this half time on your front door.
Right.
So I can't put on no fan. Yeah, Lennox, I can't put on no Christmas tree. I can't put on no Christmas light. I can't put on no fan in my house. I can't put on no AC. And if our husband tonight on the light, who have AC, fan and water, everything like that.
I hear you. I always love your practicality.
I have to
You bring it raw and real. All right. Well, I'm sure. Well, I'm sure somebody who is in need will certainly want to call you. All right. I'm sure that you are on the live, and somebody will, I'm sure, make a call. I hear you. Yes, I just love to engage this particular caller. I think she's always practical, and she's there. There are some who, of course, loathe her for her frankness and her brutal reality, but that is how it is, and that is how you must speak. We cannot, of course, be what I consider to be utilizing words of appeasement, and at the same time you really mean to the surface. I think she hits it directly and poignantly, and of course I commend her for that. Incidentally, of course, on this program we don't discriminate against people who could yellow verb, pink verb, sting verb. It doesn't matter. What we want is that once we can understand, like how we are able to understand, all of you understand what she said, and that is what we are concerned about as we express ourselves, because I will defend your right to speak, even though you and even me may disagree with a particular caller, etc., etc. But of course, her right to speak must be defended. Otherwise, we are not a democracy. Understand that. Democracy gives you the right to speak out on matters that affect you. Of course, within certain decency. You can't use obscene language. You can, of course, speak out. And even though people may be offended, you speak your mind. Like I told a police officer some time ago, I said that he looking like he drunk, and hold me and telling me that I look into under the one of the laws of the country, the petticoat law, let us call it. I said that he looking drunk, and he said me I look into incite. He doesn't understand that incite here doesn't mean I calling a police officer a drunkard. Doesn't mean that I have incited him to do something that he would not normally do. He's a police officer, and therefore is expected to be calm and collective and trained sufficiently to understand what I've said. The only time, of course, that matter of inciting arises is if I tell another citizen, whether in his presence or not, listen, you Freddy, man gone beat the tail now, man. Or he ugly like sin. And the man is annoyed about that. That, in such circumstance, you could consider that to be exciting. It doesn't apply to the police officer. The police officer, and he has no basis. Strictly speaking, you lost the case. Then you go to court and you explain to the court what you said. You may be disrespectful, but there is no law against being disrespectful. So I thought it was important, of course, to interject that as far as that particular caller is concerned, because she is being real. And so let's get back, of course, to Dr. And of course his statement there. And I want you to, of course, before we go on, to know that it was a Sinanan who was saying that they took back and they didn't pursue the project under Manning. Well, I already explained, of course, that as far as the leap in quantum and the difference as confirmed by Ms. Santa Cruz, that if the scope of work is different, especially if it is scaled up, they have to design as well as execute, then obviously it will cost more. And over time it will cost more. As you will see Rowley saying later down the road that it costing $8 billion moving from $3 billion, somehow trying to, of course, appease or to, of course, deflect or to pacify the huge increase from $3 billion to a whopping additional $5 billion. But he, in the beginning of his presentation, trying to emphasize that it moved from $3 billion to 5 billion under UNC, and somehow you must take note and something wrong with that. Hold your tail, Rowley. You deceiver. You're trying to, of course, incite. That's what we're trying to do. But people are smarter and brighter than that. And as I was saying, Sinanan was trying to say that because it was near an election, the PNM didn't pursue, and therefore the execution or the beginnings of the execution of the highway to Point Fortin, it didn't occur. Lie! Lie! Hold your tail too! Because what you did not say is that Manning called an early election 27 to 2020. It's 3 years, it's not 5 years. Call an early election because the same Rowley, as we knew later, was the fly in the ointment. He was a tick in the rear of Rowley, of Manning, sorry. Rowley was a tick in the rear of Manning. And we know that afterwards, and wanted to get rid of him, and that therefore, if he was successful in that escapade, in calling an early elections, the career of Rowley would have been shortened. But as he say, he went Likoto, and nobody can get rid of him. But he went Likoto. But we know in our folklore that you have to pay the piper, you have to pay the jumbie. Well, now that he has not been able to pay the jumbie, everything, of course, is now collapsing on him and around him, and he must end up with blue lights and silver bracelets in a jail cell. Right, people? So I thought it was important to disabuse and to analyze and to critically, chronologically, in spite of the complexities that are built in to, of course, that particular project, but at the same time making reference to other issues as you bring them up, so that we can get a comprehensive understanding as to where we are under the iniquities, under the incompetence, under the whimsicality of this administration. They are totally toxic and is the, of course, bane and the existential threat to Trinidad and Tobago's existence across the board.
Now don't get me wrong.
Hear him now. Don't get him wrong now. He was going to say don't get him wrong. There's a little lag, so we will wait.
And met this project on the table.
He was saying that don't get me wrong, because it was just the 3 billion was just a proposal now. But of course, after he emphasized that somehow it was untoward, it was unjust, it was nefarious for the project to start at an additional billion and something dollars. That manipulator of words and underminer of integrity in public life.
Consideration of an award of a contract for continuation of construction, an interested group of known high-level Brazilian executives of OAS flew by Dassault private jet from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil to Durban in South Africa in pursuit of the said contract. These executives then traveled by car to Johannesburg for the singular purpose of meeting a member of the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago, a minister responsible for and involved in the decision on this project.
So again, superficial, cacophonous, ambulatory, self-serving babblings of a desperate prime minister who clearly is now agonized of having to call an election before 2025. That is, I put in that part of it, because that's the only purpose that kind of hogwash could be. Because he will have to explain to us, and I want, of course, you, the sycophants as well, to make your own judgment and analysis on this matter. When he went, of course, to the boardrooms of the so-called upstreamers BP, etc. When he went to Australia and the Australian representative of the boat companies came back to Trinidad in order to talk to he and of course those who are responsible for making the decision to purchase those boats. Did he do wrong? Did he do something wrong? Now mind you, in saying and making that statement that he made, he never said anybody did anything wrong. He merely asking questions. But you know with Rowley is always something pernicious and something toxic. To place in your mind some kind of doubt, some kind of evil that was wrong. Well, Rowley had to tell us. When he was as opposition, entertain and of course promise Sandals. And Sandals came and talk and they talk and talk and talk. And he promised, of course, no man's land, and making the same meaning and vein that you are suggesting that that group of OAS went and meet Jack Warner in Johannesburg during the course of the World Cup in Australia. Your conduct, when you, of course, gave a decision to have the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower confirmed as the new vessels for the Tobago corridor or the Tobago sea bridge, even though the cabinet did not have a look at it, and you said that you will later, of course, present it to them and give them the reasoning, because as Prime Minister, you had a duty, of course, to exculpate or to alleviate the emergency or resolve the emergency that was the sea bridge, even though you created it by selling back the Galicia, which of course you confessed later. People. Should we give any kind of credence or any kind of oxygen to the nonsense that Rowley just told us, that somehow that meeting was corrupt? That is what he's saying. And let us not waste time with that talk. So if that is so, and he has had over the last 8 years numerous such meetings, then this man is the epitome and the quintessential corrupt bandit. That's what he has to be. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Lennox, a pleasant good night again.
Yes.
Just as I was about to call you to tell you about Sandals, he said it.
Yes.
He didn't have a problem
No.
with the opposition leader entertaining Butch Stewart. He didn't have a problem.
Not at all.
Promising Butch Stewart Tobago,
Yeah.
no man's land.
Yeah. As
Right?
opposition.
25 years no tax.
Yes.
And one set of goodies. He didn't have a problem with that. But you come to regurgitate. You see where they get it from? You go from Asia. That is why you have to read from a paper. Because he knows there's a lot of lies. Right? So he put down the lies on paper.
Yes.
So he figured he will get it right. But he's still not getting it right. Because the man's a blank lying, failed SOB.
That's right.
And what kind of point fingers, but Rowley should remember, every time he points his dirty fingers at somebody, how many pointed back at him? And I hope when they see that Monday night report start back, they lay it on him. Because Bonilas did some of it, they lay it on him for lying.
That's right.
For lying.
I'm going to take a look at it.
I don't know what Rowley gets in lying like that. I don't know what he gets in lying like that. But you see, he can fool some of the people all of the time. Councillor Lennox.
And even that sum is deteriorating. So there must be a point where it is a zero sum, because nobody, and I can envisage the day will come when people will be sitting in the same room with him and he talking to himself as people would just be engaged in their own issues, catapult and projected and created and manifested by him, and the level of incompetence and criminal behavior that of course has stereotypified the Rowley administration. So I thought it was important, of course, to make the comparison. I want you sycophants to the so-called additional billion that he disrespectfully and have no authority to talk, because the government of the day took the decision, and is that he cannot post facto, after the fact, get on as if he was prime minister when he was in fact opposition. The system doesn't work like that, and he understands that. With only 22 seats, look what he has done in terms of undermining our constitution. Take it and of course cause a postponement of a local government elections. Take it and implement laws that have been shut down in the court. Is unable to pass or to continue with its nefarious ways in the context of bail bill and of course gangs and gang laws, only to punish those very persons that at one time he said he loved. He said he loved the African youth. He said he loved them. And when he talked about undermining, when he said that nobody in Diego Martin, Lavantil, beat up Silas, who do you think he's talking about? Is Africans. Undermining, when he was criticizing and on the rampage, and of course belligerent and bellicose, and of course his pugilistic nature. Yeah, pugilist, a boxer. You want to knock out Manning politically, of course. His pugilistic nature was one to suggest that he's the defender of the Africans along the East-West corridor, as he mentioned, and he loved them. And when he gets into office, looking to extend bail beyond reason, looking to keep them in jail beyond reason, even though they may be innocent. You see, because the reason for having bail people and the reason for the principle in our criminal jurisdictional domain and the adherence thereto are fundamental. We have a jurisdiction that says that man is entitled to bail because you are innocent until proven guilty. That's why. You are innocent until proven guilty. And because man cannot judge in purpose, have some kind of divine right or some divine ability to know or to get into someone's mind to say that they was wrong or right, because of that, and because of the frailty of humankind, and because of other human beings, vindictive and evil like Rowley, will set up other people and bear false witness against them, as we saw, of course, with the Vincent Nelson matter, using the entire state apparatus to bear false witness against a political opponent for his personal political aggrandizement and staying in office in the most bizarre and treacherous exercise in auto coup scenario. Is a coup by itself. That kind of conduct, utilizing state resources, $10 million you give the man to bear false witness against Anand Ramlogan and of course Ramdeen. I'm talking about Vincent Nelson, yes. And then when the tutu hit the fan, when the feces hit the fan, when the stool hit the fan, he then say he didn't know and the cabinet didn't know, but he was up and down the place referring to that matter and talking about state witness in other historical cases like Abdul Malik and Pamasa being the state witness. All of that he was saying, but suddenly the cabinet didn't know anything. You lying son of a gun. You lying son of a gun. You despicable, wretched piece of protoplasm that ought to have never was. Yes, that ought to have never was. For what you have done to the people of Trinidad and Tobago today. And you're high flying all over the place and pretending to be some kind of statesman. No. And I always turn out to be the bane of his people and the evil of his people, and was deposed summarily and with a high degree of indignation by the people and humiliation to him, the same way Rowley must be deposed. Same way. I want to make it very clear. Those are facts that are irrefutable, pellucid, and the experience of every single Trinbagonian today. And I applaud those within the PNM, modicum of principle. And I call on people like over in Padmore, who have nothing to lose again, to call on Rowley and his bunch of opportunistic political parasites who have turned the party into a true, unadulterated and pellucid, and of course, without any compunction, a criminal enterprise. Let's go straight to the line. A pleasant good night. We always give way to the line. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Welcome to the corridor.
A pleasant good night to you, Lennox Smith, and everybody on the line.
Pleasant good night to you as well.
Yes, Lennox Smith. Pleasant good night to you and everybody on the line. Right, well, I'm not coming on your live, so I'm missing a lot of information.
All right.
So I just want to put something out there, although I did it earlier on today on the live, but I want to put it on your program in case you ain't talk about it, but I just still want to put it out there. Now, that part of the highway will open up there. Based on the information that Mulina and them put out today, I too realized that they're still going about who bringing the people. That highway, even though they say when they finish the bridge in Francheva, it will be complete. That highway is still incomplete because it's about intersection in Mondesi to San Fernando. The real highway is to come from Davis side to hook up to Mondesi and to come to point. Because when you go on Google Maps, you see where it's saying Parliament Ocean Highway coming to point. That's this name for and them give it here. So the highway is still missing parts because it has to go through Pina side, through Sapphire, come back around to Mondays and then come straight to point. Because they want to make sure that they have no traffic light. Because they're going to Port of Spain, from point. You should be able to be making that drive with no traffic light ahead of you until you reach wherever. Where you have to be passing stand and meeting the traffic light by Gov City and all these places and then why the bypass? So they're fooling these people once again. Like the highway, like the bypass, the highway is really from when it starts from point and it reach where the main intersection in Monday, that piece of the carry back the other side. That is the highway. Because I see all the joy and all this schematics when OAS was doing the project. So I know, and Mulina and them know, and I'm sure Rowley and them know that too.
Of course they know.
But according to what Mulina and them say, Rowley and them change up the thing and them. So that piece in sand, that is not the highway, like the bypass. Right? So I just tell them to put that out there. Right? Doctor and listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, of course, for that intervention. People are edifying themselves. Well done, my friend. Well done. Because misinformation and disinformation that has become the hallmark of the propaganda machinery of this government. Because he did in fact say that the even eyes that the highway in finish. He also mentioned that the money that they got back was supposed to finish. I have yet to confirm it, but he did say in that speech that he got was supposed to move the highway from Point to San Fernando or vice versa. Full stop. The money, and therefore they couldn't consider the other parts. But of course, he trying to avoid the political repercussions of that, because those areas that was finished is PNM oriented, and the parts that have been left alone is dominated by the UNC, you see. So he was clever, or should I say, he was stupid enough to make that obvious position clear. But let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Welcome to the corridor. Yes. Pleasant good night. Yes. Yes, good night.
Good night. Let us have a message for Rowley and Rowley wife.
Go ahead.
Good night, Lennox. I have a message for Rowley. I call her Rowley. You know, like Dr. Rowley for me.
Good.
Dr. Killer. Dr. Killer Rowley. I have a message for you. I have a message for your wife. Right, Lennox?
Go ahead.
Dr. Killer. Dr. Killer, stop taking every money to the Barry's house. Because when Barry's house, every money you use it to pay your life bill. Right? And that Barry's house and so was a focus free. Sharon now, the wife, right? She, a big woman. You can put some sense to a woman that make a man. So she's a mother, a woman is a mother, supposed to know how to put things in place and set things in place. Look at a woman she is. Right up? Huh?
Yes, I'm here. She will speak for herself. I heard her speak already. She can't control that man.
What kind of woman Lennox wife is?
That
Big hard back woman.
Lennox wife, Rowley wife. Rowley wife. Alright.
It doesn't matter.
Alright, Alright. Okay then. I will respond off air. Yes, indeed, of course. Well, I'm sure you would realize the slip of the tongue is a Freudian slip, and that is to say she said Lennox wife, but of course, she was referring to Rowley wife. I want to tell you that we played, of course, a clip of an interview, a wife of Keith Rowley, and she said that in non-certain terms, maybe in the form of a confession, that when men have a particular space, they dominate, and they take up that space and dominate, suggesting that they dominate even the woman in the relationship. That ambiguous in terms of clearly defining that Rowley is not that kind of man, but she said men, and Rowley is a man, and one could infer that she was speaking from experience, so she probably would have had a hell of a time with this man. But that is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, at this point in time, of course I can bring that for you, I can prove that. That is no big thing to prove. I played it on this program already. Sharon Rowley's position. Maybe I just for confirmation, I'll bring the tape tomorrow. I'll play the tape tomorrow. But the fact of the matter is that the statement by Rowley is to try to deflect attention away from the obvious, that they prefer to have the highway from Point to San Fernando. Notice that. Of course, Labrie and so on will benefit. And then state one time, because the attack is obvious. Why didn't you, of course, continue where the UNC had left off and bring the highway where the caller rightly said? Because it would have been, whether it's a redesign, that was the highway. Well, I want to say, just as how I would say for the UNC, I say it for Rowley, and by suggesting that is the best thing. No, you are despicable, and you are destructive, and you are dishonest. Because if the UNC was in office, the highway would have come from the bay and go where it's supposed to go, where they would have liked it to go originally. We will bring that map as well and take it into Point 14. And of course, all of the branch connections would have been accommodated as well for the various communities that straggles the stretch of the Sir Solomon Hochoy Highway that was supposed to be continued. How dare you call it a different name and then tell us that the money was only for that, and it couldn't be extended. So therefore, your conscience prick you, and you know that that would have been so pellucid, so obvious, so conspicuous to mention that. You see, who the gods wish to destroy, they first send them mad, and then therefore, oh, what a tangle web we weave when we first set out to deceive. And it is so obvious that you have insulted the intelligence of the people not to recognize by your ambulatory, and as the one of the callers said, in fact, of course, our external provider, external contributor said, cacophonous is not only cacophonous, but it is also eating your own filth. Cacophonous babblings, irksome, but coprophagia scenario. Eat your own dunk. Eat your own dunk. Eat your own poop. You fool nobody with that. The intention was to take the damn money and do it anyway. So why you couldn't add money in order, of course, to start that end as well? They're talking about you were suggesting you were constrained. You were constrained when at any rate to the $1 billion that you in order to finish that piece over 8 years. That's the level of incompetence, deception, and evil and wickedness that we have operating as government in this country. So let us not waste time with them kind of hogwash and deflections. So I thought it was important, of course, to introduce that as well, and to confirm and to, of course, dismiss once and for all that aspect that Rowley try, of course, to use innuendos in order to treat with that particular matter. Yes. Yes, people. So that is the situation as it stands. Let's continue, of course, with Dr. Rowley. Beautiful night, a beautiful night, and of course, is an exercise in reality, and of course, making that we speak the truth and nothing but the truth, and of course, to make certain that we expose Rowley and mind you, he suffers from an inferiority complex, not a superiority complex, and who calls every minute and talks about his that he's prime minister, etc. He has to be a man suffering from inferiority complex. Who nobody doubts that you are prime minister, but what I'm sure is built in there in his own conflict, schizophrenic. One part saying that you thief the election, and the next part saying I am prime minister. That is the conflict within Rowley that he has to deal with for the last 8 years. And an abject, of course, not only coward, but a total and absolute blight. Let us hear him again as we continue with tonight. We will go until the end.
Took place at the Michelangelo Towers in Johannesburg during the FIFA World Cup in South Africa.
I'll try not to interrupt.
What was the purpose
as we
and
move forward
outcome of this transatlantic secret meeting on the eve really wrapped up here in Trinidad after the World Cup?
All words similar to
it is interesting
the
to
fake oil
that the then
and the fake emails.
The leader of the opposition
talk
has never once shown any interest in this allegation, nor has she ever made even a passing comment. This contract was governed by
to give fuel to your propaganda.
One of the major benefits of utilizing FIDIC terms and conditions
FIDIC, you see, come with FIDIC now.
These terms and conditions are standard and internationally recognized. A party should only, with very good reason, amend the standard terms and conditions in that FIDIC yellow book. The former UNC government, upon initiating the changed the standard and accepted advance payment from 10% to 20% of the contract sum. This upward amendment immediately resulted in OS receiving approximately 856 million Trinidad and Tobago dollars, as opposed to the 428 million that they were due under the FIDIC Yellow Book 10% arrangement.
That is the man who told us that he could do more with less. More significantly, he damn fast. UNC was in government, they took the decision. How dare you post facto question, because they have made it clear already. They wanted to get the project. Common sense will tell you that as quickly as possible, because it was supposed to finish by 2016. 2016 was supposed to finish. And a narrow timeline prior to that by 2015. That high speed, Rowley, you know not about that. And that was their prerogative at any rate. Their prerogative, you're damn fast and out of place to ask the questions now and talking about commission of inquiry that you'll pay $11 million and can't come off the ground. That is the level of evil that they're using our money to do, and children have laptops all over the place to get, especially in poor communities, and you're talking about a means test. You wicked son of a bitch.
Another major issue at inception, all payments made to OS for activities under the letter of intent, which totaled $236.4 million, should have been deducted from the advance payment. However,
you hear? Should have. That is not your business. That is the government of the day business. Nobody told you that you cannot do, but the electorate will decide. When you said that we should be paying for the Cabo Star 200 or 2,000 US less, a whistleblower tell you that, and Cabo Star is here since it came, and you never made it leave. If it was a UNC disclosure, you're up and down the country, you're saying that somebody corrupt, etc. You corrupt son of a gun.
These sums were not deducted. Before the ground was scratched, the former government provided OS with over 1 billion Trinidad and Tobago taxpayer funds. This project, the contract, should have been completed in March 2015.
Now, mind you, let's be clear here. Apart from the fact that it is the prerogative of the government to work, once the client, the government in this case of the UNC, is satisfied with the performance, that's one. Two, so it was their decision to make. Two, there is something called a mobilization fee that they are entitled to. Even ordinary contractors with HGC, they get a mobilization fee. Of course, the higher, the larger the project in terms of cost, the more it will be in real terms. But the fact of the matter is that they are entitled to that. Just as a contractor in HGC. So I'm bringing it small so you understand the wider implications and the normative behavior in these kinds of infrastructural contract, civil engineering contracts. You are required as well to go to an insurance broker and insure the project in lieu of, as was the case with OAS, and the insistence as far as built into the contract by that of the UNC, protecting the national and the people's and the public's interests. They had to put up bonds. Almost $1 billion in bonds. They're telling me about. So they mustn't get no mobilization fee because you say so. And somehow once it's not you doing it, they are corrupt. But you have Josamco a company that constructed part of the highway to Point Fortin. That piece is into the swamp below. Is the same blasted company that you have pouring concrete on the basement of Palisade House and then tell us up at Constantine Park for the local government election as your last gesture before you get curtailed to the point of over 6,000 persons voting for the UNC. In other words, 6,000 persons voting against. You're going up there and say that nobody who worked for the government worked on Palisade House because you have questions to answer on that monstrosity. Hold your tail. Hold your tail. You corrupt, nefarious, evil, wicked, diabolical, and avarice son of a gun. They tell me about that level of hypocrisy must end. It must end. And you must, of course, call elections now. You blasted thief and dishonest.
It was a 4-year contract, as you would have been told this evening, to provide a 4-lane divided highway with full grade separations and interchanges. It included 8 interchanges as well as 8 river bridges. It was far from being completed when the UNC demitted office in early September 2015.
Now, I want you to understand that kind of semantics, the use abusively of words and the laying out thereof so as to fool. You know what he said? He said it was far from completed. So it means, therefore, there was a measure of completion. When you hear Senanan and you hear how you would believe that they did no work, and he still have the audacity, the temerity to then say a certain portion was finished, but the amount of money that was paid to them did not equate to the value of work complete. You'll hear him say that. He and Senanan trying to use semantics and trying to rewrite history and make it look as though it's a total P&M project. That is what that buffoon Senanan come and say, I'll play him tomorrow.
To a virtual halt. And unpaid local contractors were bawling and turning to the new government for help. It was disturbing that rather than utilize low interest rate funding for this billion-dollar project, I should say this multi-billion-dollar project, from a multilateral lending agency, which is the normal way one would approach this, the largest project ever awarded in Trinidad and Tobago. You can approach either the IDB, the European Union, or so on.
Let me tell you how disingenuous. I'm sorry to interject, but I need, because it irks me to know that the man deliberately misleading the population, and I must stand up there and listen to that level of hogwash. It was clear the intention of the UNC. The UNC decided to pay for the project out of the consolidated fund. What does that mean? It means we don't have to borrow any money in order to put the pressure on future generations. That's what that means. But Rowley is saying that they should have borrowed. That is not your place. That is their place. They were the government. And I want to say commendation, and all of us owe the UNC a debt of gratitude because it would have meant that an additional $7 billion would have been added to the debt to GDP. That by the time the UNC left office, it was 44%. Today, it is nearly 100%. The man borrowed twice as much and said that he came into government in order to do more with less. This beast, this bestial element of inhumanity, you have to see it for what it is, and you cannot compromise. That is our children, our country, and our resources, and to use it in that despicable way, and still looking for kudos, and still looking for commendation, and still lofting yourself as if, of course, you did us a favor. You have done us no favor. Instead, of course, you have jeopardized Trinidad and Tobago's economic, social, and, of course, Even our quality of life and standard of living has been in jeopardy since Rowley came into office. Understand that? All of what he's saying there is either pipe dream or, of course, his own misleading version of what he calls the truth. Misleading. There is nothing. So if they decide not to go to ADB or IDB, the World Bank, or the Caribbean Development Bank, to do it, kudos for the UNC. You have gone there and look what you put the country in. It's 95 to 100% debt to GDP. You double it up when you met it at 44%. Well done, the UNC. Well done, Kamala Prasad Bisesa. And hold your tail, Rowley. You despicable lump of protoplasm. And of course, worthy of non-existence. You jeopardize the country and looking for credit and blaming others. You are a failure consummate at everything you touch. It's some kind of destructive element in it. Never thinking out policies properly. You heard tonight. You take away the laptops and you don't understand the implication of it down the road. You take away cerebral palsy assistance and you don't know the implications down the road. You have no long-term vision? Or is it cut and paste, helter-skelter, higgledy-piggledy, any port for a storm, and vike, of course, policies and programs? The UNC had a clearly cut out and defined reason for the highway going the route that it did. A tremendous amount of agricultural holdings would have been opened up, and of course a tremendous amount of development would have been taking place along a longer stretch of highway that would have modernized Trinidad and Tobago. And because we have to engage in diversification, because we cannot depend on oil, gas and petrochemical into the future because of the problems with, of course, the climate change and other factors that will jeopardize life on earth for human beings. That is the thinking of the UNC as their school building policy and the program would have suggested, as their computer in every school and for every child would have suggested, as their school feeding program would have suggested, as that highway to Point Fortin would have suggested. You are simply obnoxious, toxic, evil, diabolical, and out of it. You're total dunderhead and heartless and stone-hearted. And I should add, stone-headed. Not just indolent, but a clear case of nincompoopness.
UNC government paid OAS and others via cash transfers from the Ministry of Finance up to 2014.
Yeah, they take it from the consolidated fund, so we fund it ourselves. It's our money. We can do what the hell we want with it. But when you borrow other people, you have to pay back. And we only suggested to pay back. And people, of course, I think we should come to the end here. Of course, don't forget tomorrow morning at the ground report. We have not yet finished. We are about quarter way through it. Sorry for the intentions and so on, but I had to do it in order to clarify certain things, because there are those on the program that clearly don't understand all of the complexities that would have been involved, and the determination of Dr. Rowley, like the little toddler, as I referred to earlier, where a hot cup of water is on a table, and the focus and the intention is to, of course, pull it down and pull it on themselves, and of course that will give them not only untold pain, but of course will possibly take them to an emergency ward in one of the hospitals to address burns. But that is Rowley. He will not stop. He will continue, of course, to try to hoodwink and deceive. But in his case, I didn't mind if he was a toddler and someone didn't see, and he pulled down the cup of hot water on himself. I mean, that's how I feel. Because, I mean, it's a simply ridiculous, and the man's tenacity to try to deceive us is unfathomable, unprecedented, and highly irregular. As I said, of course, we will continue tomorrow night. I didn't expect to take 2 days to complete his statement, but it's so much in it that I had to, of course, make the intervention. Of course, it's now 15 minutes past 10 o'clock. Of course, don't forget tomorrow morning, the ground report, Andy, Mikey, and myself, as we continue, of course, water in the making, and of course, property tax, and then, of course, the introduction of the Revenue Collection Authority that is to come as well. And if one has to use as a microcosm the conduct of the HGCs, remember the HGC has been divided into 3 now: construction, collection, and I think acquisition or distribution. Construction, collection, and distribution. So one part distribute, and another part collect. Well, they even have their own estate police vehicles, and they are going around now to apartments and HGC tenants or mortgagees, and doing what? And evicting them for arrears, etc. So that's how efficacious they are. So much so that, of course, they have decided to stop it. But I think I have something. I think I should end with that. I have something on that particular event that happened recently. Let's go straight and look at it, and then, of course, we will make our departure thereafter. It's important to understand this government is totally toxic. They have weaponized government against the people, and we must resist, because this is a democracy. We are the boss, not that small group of opportunistic political parasites who have arrogated unto themselves that the law is not for them, and that they can impose for their friends, family, and acquaintances huge benefits, generating a 1%, and leave the rest of us in the doldrums. Let's look at this as a conclusion. Watch this.
Let's talk about the energy sector's performance in the last 8 years. Let's start. I'll take you from Chaguaramas all the way to Galeota. Chaguaramas, Republic Bank closed down, Royal Bank closed down, Zanzibar closed down, Massey Stores closed down, all because of lower energy security on the peninsula. We go down to Point Lisas, Mita closed down, MHTL M1 closed down, Yara ammonia plant closed down, Titan methanol closed down. We go down to Point Apia, the refinery closed down. We go down to Point Fortin. We now have 3 LNG trains when we used to have 4, and the 3 are operating at 65% capacity. We turn around the corner and we go to Galeota. Galeota is a ghost town, right? Because energy sector activity drilling has fallen 63% in 2015 to 2022. Gas production has fallen 30%, oil production fallen 27%. Employment, persons with jobs in the energy sector has fallen 54% in the last 8 years. So I don't know how that could be construed as a sector moving in the right direction. There is hope on the horizon if we get Manatee. Shell hasn't sanctioned it. Dragon, we don't know when that's going to come. We know the minister signed something, everybody clapped. If I see somebody clapping for something they're not aware of, I might think they're mad. But nobody knows what was signed, and nobody could say when that dragon gas will arrive in Trinidad. So the actuals, we talk about forecasts and we talk about actuals. When you look at the actual numbers published by the Ministry of Energy, gas production is, those plants that are remaining operational in Point Lisas and Atlantic are doing so at 70-80% capacity. So we are in a worrying space. And I'm saying, the message I'd like to get out tonight is that I don't see any sort of reprieve for that narrative I just gave there until 2028.
So people and amazed and spellbound are talking about Brian Manning and, of course, Al Rari. What's them? that is sit down and listen to a former minister of energy under the Manning administration, under the UNC administration. Let me just make sure I have that clear. Yes, sorry about that. Let me just bring it back up.
Let's talk about the energy sector's performance.
So you see Brad Manning and of course Al-Rari sit down there and their mouth shut. They can't respond to that because authority talking, experts talking. It's not political mumbo jumbo. He said that the country, the southern part of the country, is like a blasted goat because of the poor decision made by this government to close down and to shut down because they want to protect in the main Rowley from the fake oil matter. This government, collectively and individually, they have some serious criminal and civil questions to answer. They have been kicked out of office in disgrace. In disgrace, people. In disgrace. Let me just, of course, something else here that, all right, that I suppose, right, good. And finally, of course, let me get you to the level of violence that all of that and what we discussed tonight is engendering loss of hope and our young people totally disrespectful. I want you to note in particular how a young man kicked a senior citizen and just to take her bag from her, to rub her on the ground. I mean, it is appalling. It's a Russian roulette environment, and Rowley goes abroad to talk to other people, that which we are paying him to do, and what he said he's capable of addressing, and believe that he could stay in office and let that tragedy continue unabated. And we as a people, by the way of our votes, are hopeless to do anything about it. So he believes. Watch this. Watch this. Violence created by the Rowley, the PNM government. Watch. Watch the kick. Watch that kick. It's amazing. Let's watch that again. Wow. Let's watch it again. Wow. I'm sure every one of you feel that. Watch that. Bam. On a street in Port of Spain, take her bag and go on. Watch it. You stamp her in her face earlier. Watch this. Watch this. Stamp her in her face earlier. Watch this. Watch, you see? Watch. Watch. It could be your grandmother, could be mine. It could be anybody's. Watch this. Stamp her in her face. And then went and kicked her in her back. And powerfully, you could see that, look, she could hardly get up. And the young man, of course, clearly was with them, playing he consoling and so on. But let's go further afield. Let's hear what HDC now is a result.
I don't know where to put my 7 children. Why go with 7 children on the road? Them people crazy, man.
As the police and the Housing Development Corporation pulled up in front of her home, Sabrina McLeod could not hold back her tears.
People offer 25,000 on this spot. Oh, the problem is not money, boy. Oh, the problem is not no money. Oh, the problem is wickedness.
But McLeod's common law husband, Raymond Mitchell,
oh, the problem is not money, boy. Oh, the problem is not money, boy. Oh, the problem is not no money. Oh, the problem is wickedness.
But McLeod's common law husband, Raymond Mitchell, admitted that he owes a substantial sum.
I owe an agency a sum of 125,000 in arrears. And the company that I has worked for, the boss man now come to offer to pay the money, and they still say no. And give us no notice of much of a month, just how much days from Tuesday to now. We still went in the office to see if we could sympathize with them and still no.
Before arriving at the Mitchell's residence, the HDC crew removed the valuables from the homes of other evicted tenants, even though they were not there. We understand that the owner of this house left around 7 a.m. and he is not present at this time. We also understand that some of these residents have not been paying their mortgages and rents, some of them more than 8 years. Housing Minister Camille Robinson-Regis told CNC3 News that the eviction drive has since been halted. The tenants will be meeting with HDC officials to discuss their arrears. Radhika D. Silva, CNC3 News.
I know that you are sad. The intention is clear. We have a responsibility as a people to be better served by our government, having regard to all of what was given to them. There is a very lasting, classic, and inimmutable, cannot change principle, and that is, to whom much is given, much is expected. Let me repeat. To whom much is given, much is expected. And when those who were given that responsibility have disappointed and have shortchanged us, they must demit office. This is not a monarch or doing anybody a favor because of complexion of skin and texture of hair. This is about life, survival, and our ability to manage our affairs. And that kind of tragedy that we are seeing unfolding on a daily basis in Trinidad, responsibility for that kind of travesty can only also be that of the government of Trinidad and Tobago that has created those conditions. You heard the woman, the potential, even though they got a substantial part of the money owed. Substantial part, they decide to, of course, still put them out. And Camille Robinson-Regis afterwards, after the fact, saying that they suspended that eviction agenda. Come on, people, come on. We have a duty and responsibility. This cannot be in sweet, sweet TNT. Rowley and they are simply toxic and evil, wicked, diabolical, and have no place. They are septic and they are totally a cesspool of corruption. That is what the reality is in Trinidad and Tobago today. So people, have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. And we will see each other tomorrow night. But before that, we will see each other on the what? On the ground report. And we will be dealing with these and other issues, but we'll complete, of course, the Rowley statement at the OS launch. Not the OS launch, but the Highway to Point Fortin launch segment, Point Fortin to San Fernando. See you then. Bye-bye.